let's review the three main disciplinary groups that you'll see here at CSUSM: the humanities, social sciences, and sciences. Each of the scholars in these disciplines seek to understand the world around us, but they each see the world differently. You can kind of think about it as a scholar's superpowers. So in the humanities, the scholars seek to understand the world around us by examining cultural artifacts. So what kinds of items might be included in this? We can think of iPhones, songs, TV shows, movies, books, poems, people, events, thought, religious beliefs, arts, etc. They examine these things by looking at the history surrounding them, other conversation that has taken place about them, and they use these theories and other ideas to explain the meaning of these items. Some majors that might be included in this group include the arts, literature, history, music, media studies, archaeology, and more. So social scientists seek to understand human behavior and how people interact with each other, political systems, their environment, etc. They may use the scientific method, as well as observation, interviews, surveys, etc. Some majors in the social sciences include psychology, education, business, sociology, and more. Scientists seek to understand the world around us by observing and describing what they see. They use the scientific method to collect evidence that will prove or disprove their hypothesis. This is a very rigid and structured methodology that scientists strictly adhere to. The sciences include majors such as math, engineering, biology, chemistry, physics, and more. We've described how these scholars may see the world differently, but let's talk about a specific example. Imagine that three scholars are at the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is a really large patch of plastic debris that's in the Pacific Ocean. That's somewhere around the size of the state of Texas, so it's really large. The humanities scholar might be looking at the garbage patch and using it as inspiration for a musical piece that evokes sounds of environmental consumerism. The social scientist might be looking at how they can influence individual perceptions and beliefs about protecting the oceans and marine life. The scientist might be looking at the garbage patch and how seabirds that live in this area are impacted by the pollutants found in the patch. Even though they're all together at the same place, these different scholars, the humanities scholar, social scientist, and scientist, see the garbage patch in different ways. Next, we're going to take a look at examples of three scholarly articles from these different disciplines that are all trying to understand the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, because one of the main outputs of this research are scholarly articles that they publish in journals, which you'll need to find for GEL and your other classes. First, we have an example from the Humanities by Joshua Otten entitled "Sounds Like Garbage, Paddling Through an Imaginary Island of Trash Toward a New Sonic Ecology." What we see here is an abstract of the article, and we can pretty quickly see that this information source uses a lot of jargon in discussing this topic. For instance, the last sentence states, "This paper positions the elusive, shape-shifting soundscape of Farside Virtual as a dynamic example of sonic ecology in praxis." That short section alone has a lot of words that are difficult to understand if you're not a music scholar. And as you become more familiar with your disciplines and your majors, you'll become more and more comfortable using the jargon that's common to your discipline. So don't worry when you read a scholarly article if it's hard to understand. They will be hard to understand, and they're still even difficult to understand for your professors. Next, let's look at an example from the social sciences. This article, "Towards a Marine Mindset, Visiting an Aquarium Can Improve Attitudes and Intentions Regarding Marine Sustainability," examines whether or not a visit to an aquarium improves people's attitudes toward marine sustainability. They're applying the scientific method to understand more about human behavior. So this would be within the field of museum studies or even psychology, conservation psychology even. So it's strongly within the social sciences. Lastly, let's look at an article in the sciences. This article, perfluoroalkosulfonates and carboxylic acids, muscle, and adipose tissues of the black-footed albatross from the Midway Island, reports on an experiment that these scientists conducted to determine the concentration of chemicals found in plastic that appear in the muscle tissue of birds that live near the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So you can see they apply the scientific method to trying to answer their question about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So you can see that although these three scholars, the humanities scholar, the social scientist, and the scientist, are all trying to better understand the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, the questions that they ask and the methods that they use to answer those questions are all very different. And a big reason why this matters to you as college students is that each of your professors comes from a different discipline and will expect you to become familiar with the ways of thinking common to their discipline. As you start in your major courses, you will start to use the methodology for your discipline and create your own knowledge as student scholars.